Hi, I'm Larry,
I'm Gret.
I'm Christy.
and welcome to Dangerous Drag Queens and Other Deviants.
A podcast about the outrageous and sometimes dark world of drag, gender, and sexual identity, and how communities facing stigmatization are making a positive impact just by living their lives out loud.
Brought to you by Virtual Arts.
Hi, everyone. I'm Larry Pellegrini, and I'm the Executive Director of Virtual Arts.
I'm Gret Gonzalez, Artistic Director.
And I'm Chrissy Patty, Director of Operations.
Virtual Arts is a theater company that enables artists and audiences to connect through cyber performances and web-based events.
We started this company in 2020 when theaters nationwide were shutting their doors. And we did it to keep theater artists connected and working.
But since then, we've been producing projects for a virtual audience and finding ways to push the digital format to the limit.
Welcome to our newest venture, the pilot episode of Dangerous Drag Queens and Other Deviants, a monthly podcast where we look into the outrageous and sometimes dark world of drag, gender, and sexual identity, and other communities currently facing bias and prejudice.
We're also going to bring the fun with guests like Logan Slaughter, ex-drag queen extraordinaire, Helen Giorgio from Buzz Talent in London, and a group of Florida drag queens who've been fighting for their rights.
In today's episode, we'll be speaking to Susan Campanaro, creator of the character Lavinia Draper and former club kid. Larry, of the three of us, you've known Susan the longest. Why don't you give our listeners a little bit of history on how we all got connected?
Well, we all got connected through a play called Tony and Tina's Wedding.
Never heard of it.
I mean, Susan, I remember meeting sometime in I was going to say like in the 80s in New York. And she was playing every single role in Tony and Tina's Wedding. She was just this powerhouse. And she did extraordinarily different characters for each piece. And I went, who in the hell is this? And where does she come from? She's been a part of my life for a long time. And always have enjoyed knowing her.
She's fantastic. I remember the first time I saw her at Tony and Tina's Wedding in New York, and I want to say she was Connie, who's the pregnant bridesmaid. Just hilarious. I right away was like, this woman is just the funniest. For those who don't know, Tony and Tina's Wedding was an off-Broadway show that ran for many, many years. It is where Larry, Gret, and how we're all connected. I was stage managing it in New York in the early 2000s, and Gret, I'll let you give your story.
Yeah, I was a performer in Tony and Tina's Wedding, Las Vegas, from 2005 until, 2019, on and off.
I think you got fired in there somewhere.
I got fired and rehired. I was banned for a little while. It happened.
Not by me.
But yeah, that is how we are all connected. And then Larry and Christy and I founded Virtual Arts in 2020, and Larry introduced Christy to me, and then the two of you introduced me to Susan.
I think one of the things to remember with Tony and Tina's Wedding and the experience with all of us, which certainly includes Susan, is that, I mean, this play has been done everywhere, from in a theater, in a church, on a boat. I've flown to Omaha, Nebraska and done it for one night. I've flown to New Orleans and done it for one night. It's amazing how flexible the piece is, and people knew it so well that they actually could go anywhere, and people could just fit in. And you learn about improv, and you learn about the world, and we've all remained friends. It's a huge family.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a unique piece that people think, oh, it's just a couple Italian families, so that must be the long and short of it. But no, there's so many diverse characters in that show that you really do meet a huge range of people who can do a huge range of things. And I can imagine Susan in all those different parts being larger than life.
Susan, who is quite amazing and has really found her footing in the drag world, is extraordinary. And I think it's time that we should maybe bring her on and talk to us.
And now here's Susan.
Well, so here we are at Dangerous Drag Queens with our fantastic Susan Campanaro.
Hi, Susan.
Hi, Susan.
Hi, thank you for having me.
It's always great to have you. And you and I had a little conversation last week, and we began to talk about the summer of 1988. So I thought that we should kind of begin back there with your history in New York, and also the history that you have with people who are in the drag community.
Well, it started the summer of '88, actually the day that I arrived. I took an Amtrak train from West Palm Beach, Florida to New York Penn Station and met my big brother, John, Giovanni, from Giovanni Sacchi Hair Salon. And he and I immediately that night went out clubbing. We went to the biggest nightclub in the summer of '88, which was called the Red Zone. And I was wearing a little frilly mini skirt, a boot top, a pill bottle hat, probably very high shoes. And it was June 1988. And this photographer, Stefan Lapino, was taking Club Kid pictures because this was the beginning of the Club Kid era. It's very Club Kid. It was all about drag and club kids and dance and party and fun. And so he was taking pictures of all of us. And the reason is that you always went in an outfit. Like everybody was dressed. Like if you were a club kid, you had a look, a dress, an outfit, you know. And at the Red Zone, all of the drag and the club kids that were quote unquote popular would sit up on the stage like VIP, you know, and Kiki and Hang. And like if you got on the stage, you were like one of them. And that summer, on Bastille Day, in the meatpacking district, they would award the Queen of Manhattan. And the Queen of the Manhattan in the summer of '88 was Cody Ravioli. And Cody Ravioli was this beautiful girl, the first trans woman I had ever seen, who showed her breasts that day and was the Queen of Manhattan. The next summer, it was RuPaul was the Queen of Manhattan.
This was before RuPaul was like RuPaul that we know today.
Oh, yeah. Lady Bunny was more popular, or not more popular, more famous because she created Wigstock. And
Right.
Wigstock was down in the East Village, and it was just a small kind of like festival. And the main thing about it was you would go in lingerie. Like the thing was you would show up in lingerie, sort of like the Mermaid Parade, where everyone dresses like a mermaid. But it was like, oh, you go to Wigstock, you wear your lingerie, you know, drag queens perform on stage, you know, maybe Cyndi Lauper. But then it blew up, and now it's no more. Now there's no more Wigstock.
It was a wonderful time in New York at that point.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Well, it was an incredible time in New York.
Even though it was there was the AIDS crisis kind of going on in there. There was really a sense of freedom in New York.
Right. I mean, so from the summer of '88 to going into the early '90s, there was a lot of, you know, a lot of deaths.
Was there a division then between the drag community and the trans community at that point?
No. We knew that there was trans girls or trans boys, but we didn't talk about it. It was just what, you know, just was what it was. Everybody was different. Everybody was queer. Everybody was partying. And that's the sort of atmosphere that I believe is on a resurgence now that I see, because I've been hosting this Muse Monday night at the Stonewall Inn. And I'm witnessing young people coming out and just dressing and having fun and being, you know, scantily dressed or a lot of clothes or wearing dresses or not wearing dresses. And it's getting more free again.
Christy and Gret, what you were both about 20 then, right? I mean, 1988, were you 10? I don't even know how old are you guys?
I was young.
I was young. I was in double digits, but I was young.
It's funny though, I do have some experience of the village at that time because my grandparents lived there and it's where my mother's from. So like, we would go to the Halloween parade every year. And so it was just always something natural for me. I'm used to like seeing this from growing up every year. This was a great, wonderful celebration and something really fun, and we always loved it.
Yeah, it makes me curious about at your age at that time, what you thought of, the summer of 1988, and did you see much of this or during those 90s? Like, how did you feel about this drag community?
We were talking about this at one point where Larry said, where do you remember seeing the first drag queen ever in your life? And I honestly had a hard time answering that question because I kind of don't remember, which is probably a very good thing. I just feel like, I grew up in a theater community. I was always surrounded with people who were doing their own thing, and in their own way. And so I kind of can't remember. I do remember that the first time I ever saw like a large gathering of drag queens was at the New York City Gay Pride Parade somewhere in the 90s. I think it was mid 90s, I would say. But in terms of exposure to drag, I honestly can't put my finger on it, which is a good thing. I mean, I'm young, but I'm not that young. So I do feel like the fact that doesn't like pop in my mind might be a good sign.
Yeah, well, I think that, we were talking about, RuPaul's Drag Race and putting it so on the map. Like we always I believe we always in our TV history or in our history of fun, we have seen, drag or LGBTQ performers, but I think that it got so put on the map in the world with the RuPaul's Drag Race. Back in the day, the club life was the dance and the party.
Mhm.
And the drag performance was like one performance, like a phenomenal, crazy thing. Like one time I saw this wonderful African American woman pulling, anal beads out, like whatever, like something crazy happens. And then it would just go back to dance.
Well, it was a rare breed. I mean, if you ever saw anybody in the day in drag, it was shocking. Where today, it's, I mean, I live in Portland, so I mean, the amount of shockingness that I see is amazing. But you had to almost search it out in those 80s to find that community. And when you did, the further kind of in that you went to the smaller clubs to the get to know more people, I think the more fascinating it became.
So there's the Stonewall Inn and then there's the Stonewall Park. And during Gay Pride Month, about 2 years ago, I hosted a couple of afternoon performances with some of the trans, you know, long time, like 72, 73-year-old women that are in the community. And we would do these performances, and, they say, like, girl, I've been doing this since the 60s. I was there when the brick went through, like, it's not new.
It isn't.
It's like when Will and Grace came out, you know. We'd already seen Billy Crystal in Soap, but of your generation, you don't remember Soap. Well, we already saw a gay character in TV, but when it came out in Will and Grace, we were like, wow, now Jack, it's, oh, the duplex and gay and piano bar and doing cabaret.
I remember the Ellen kiss. I think that was my first like moment of TV acceptance that I really like put it
Oh,
together and
right.
remember.
Right. Which got her series ended, right?
Yeah, I think so. But she's done fine for herself.
Yeah.
Ultimately, I think.
I think she was okay with that. Yeah, at that point, I think she knew.
Yeah, I think so. Well, in 88, of course, that's really right around when Tony and Tina's wedding began. But in the years preceding that, working with artificial intelligence, we would go to places like the Limelight.
Oh, yeah. I went to the Limelight all the time.
Nancy Casero had created this character named Vicky Auberjohn, who was kind of a Judy Garland character. And we would always go there And it really was a remarkable, remarkable world at 11:30, 12 o'clock, 1
You
o'clock.
never went out before 11:30. And then at the Limelight, there was the VIP room. So what would happen was, you would go there and there'd be the huge dance floor. And then there was the second floor, which was like a lounge. And then there was the VIP floor where you would want to get into that floor. Like that's sort of like what the old club life was like. Where like, okay, you're in the club, they let you in the club. Now how far can I get and be with the real club kids, with the real, with the famous club kids?
Let's talk about this, bring the fun back. Because I think that in every aspect of our lives and our being today, I think it's a very important, slogan to remember, because we're always going after the deep and the dark, which of course I think is also important, but not enough time is really given to the fun.
Right. I think that we've gotten very serious. We've gone through some really hard times. Politically, we're like polarized. We went through the pandemic. And what's necessary is the fun. But what happened was, like any movement or any change, people got very serious, like, what are you? Like, are you a cis drag queen as Lavinia Draper? Are you a cis woman? Are you doing drag? Are you a king? Are you a drag king? All these kind of things, and it became very like, what are you? What are you? You have to tell me what you are. And I can't do that because I am just me. Like Lavinia Draper, the character that I created that was in the club life for the past 25 years. Yes, she was there. Therapy 10 years, 15 years on Fire Island, Stonewall 25 years, Duplex 20 years. Yeah, that's who, but she's just another person. It's not cis drag, it's not this. So I'm only bringing that up that I got into a little bit of trouble with that. Like, I, the what are you thing. And I wasn't willing to say what I was. I mean, I'm a character. I'm playing Lavinia Draper. She's a fully developed person. Or I'm Susan Campanaro, a fully developed person.
Right.
But when people are trying to make a point and make a movement, there has to be some seriousness around it. Once it's all figured out, and everybody's relaxed and everybody's got their pronouns down and everybody's being accepted, then the fun comes back. And that's what I see is happening.
And you're saying that's within the community, because certainly outside the community, we're not necessarily all the way there, but you're saying within that
In
community.
the community.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right,
Like
right.
the club life was getting a little bit rough,
Sure.
It was getting like, okay, this is not fun. This is getting too serious. What we really need is acceptance, self-acceptance, but we gotta have fun.
Right. And I would especially think that as when you're surrounded by your own community, that's the place that you really do want to be able to just let the rest of the world go and have less worries.
Yeah, but it has been these past, couple years through the pandemic that all of this rise, the Black Lives Matter, the Trans Lives Matter, the changing of the flag. I mean, all of this stuff is new. Even my gay friends that are in their 60s and 70s, I mean, they've had to adjust.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a gay man, but it's like nothing anymore.
Right, but you remember when it was a thing where you had to fight for the right to be a gay man.
Yeah. And that's not ancient history.
No,
know,
it's ancient history. And for me, Portland is the first place that I've ever felt comfortable to hold one's hand.
Oh, that's
And
wonderful.
never felt comfortable of course, never in New York. And I don't know why, but
I was going to say, and you've lived in some pretty,
Yeah.
liberal cities.
never in Hawaii, never in, we've lived in many places, but there's just a much more relaxed feeling about all of that. And, at a certain age, you're like, okay, well, what are they going to do? Shoot me?
Right.
Maybe.
In an effort to bring this towards the end and keep us on the fun side, we thought we'd have a little segment of rapid fire questions. Susan, as you mentioned before, you have this fabulous character, Lavinia Draper. So I'm sure for many years you can pull on your experience from that and just kind of answer these in a quick one or two, whatever pops into your head first. So we'd like to know first, what's your favorite accessory to perform in?
A bikini.
Ooh, yes.
Love it. When you want to look super glam, what's one makeup item you use?
Glitter.
Love some.
Of course.
Do you have a favorite pair of heels and what are they?
Oh, my favorite shoes. Well, they're really platforms. I just bought them. They're gold platforms, very thick heel, and then a thick wedge, and you just go into them.
Do you have a favorite audience that you've ever performed for?
The greatest times in my life have been hosting the Stonewall Float 2 years in a row with a microphone in front of thousands and thousands of people saying, I'm Lavinia Draper from the Stonewall Inn. The other is the main stage at Denver Pride Fest. When I come out and I say, hi everyone, I'm Lavinia Draper from the Stonewall Inn in New York City. And they go, what? Anything at the Stonewall Inn and Denver Pride. It's the greatest times of my life.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much, Susan. Where can folks find you if they want to see you perform or learn more about you?
Well, my Instagram is Miss Lavinia NYC. I have TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook. And I'm always at the Stonewall Inn on Monday nights. Then I've got like cabaret shows all over the place, different times. But if you want to see what I'm doing, you just go to my Instagram, Miss Lavinia NYC. And then I'm going to be in London at the end of July and Edinburgh in August with my show, Doing Time with Lavinia, composed by Lynn Portis. Like, if I can say anything to your listeners who are maybe entertainers or want to be entertainers, the main joy is the freedom and to not care what other people think of it about you. Because if we're having fun, they're having fun.
Whenever I've seen you host, your audience becomes a reflection of that joy that you have.
You just have to be joyful.
Well, thank you, Susan. Really, really appreciate it. And we're going to look forward to talking to you again and also for seeing many more fantastic drag entertainers.
What a fascinating interview with Susan, right? She's so great.
Oh, God. I love it.
She's
That
so
girl.
awesome. So part of this podcast we wanted to do is talk about current events and what's going on in the drag world as we're recording. At the time of this recording, one of the latest things that have come down is a Texas case, which is called, I want to get the name right, Spectrum WT versus Wendler, which has to do with the West Texas A&M University being banned from putting on a drag show. Have you guys been following this? Do you have any thoughts?
I mean, aren't college students old enough to decide if they want a drag show? Did they really need like the president of the university to tell them that they can't?
Right. And his argument is so interesting. It's not one I'd heard before, and maybe you guys have, but his claim that drag is somehow misogynistic or a parody of gender norms, and so therefore is sexist, is just really interesting. I hadn't heard that take on drag before. And have you guys heard that before?
No, and he also equates it to blackface, which I thought was a little bit overdoing it.
Yeah, just his arguments for the ban in the first place are new to me. That's something I hadn't heard before.
See, I'm reading this on the Texas Tribune. It's being done under the guise of protecting children.
On a college campus, which is interesting.
Right.
I mean, listen, I feel like children should be protected, but I'd rather have my child protected by an outrageous drag queen than these yahoos who think that all of this stuff is morally bankrupt. I would always want my kid to be able to see wider than more narrow.
Sure. And I always felt like personally and in general that college is the place where you sort of leave your own nest and you get exposure to other ways of the world, for better or for worse. And you're at a point in your life where you're supposed to be making decisions about these things that exist outside of your own bubble. these are places where we should feel safe to explore. I mean, that's the whole idea.
In this article, it says for young residents, the events over the last few years have made it clear that the mere existence of queerness makes some people upset. I'm sure that it does, but a drag queen, really? It's like, I mean, did anybody ever see Flip Wilson play Geraldine, or see, I mean, on the Danny Kaye show, they used to do drag.
Very
Some Like It
curious.
Hot too was that
Yeah.
Jack Lemmon, and yeah, I mean it's people have been cross-dressing. Drag has been around since people have been around.
Right. Yeah, and you do think that a university is a place where they would want to foster diversity and curiosity and learning about other ways of being in the world, and instead it's being squashed. And this is a public university. I mean, I think that needs to be said. It's not a privately owned university. It's not a privately run university. It's a public university, and they're making these blanket decisions that affect anyone and everyone that would participate and go there. So it's mind-boggling to me.
Yeah, I do hope it eventually gets to the Supreme Court and they try to do a decent decision on it based on precedent, but I don't really have much hope in the Supreme Court to make the right decision on anything,
No,
unfortunately.
and I know Clarence Thomas dresses in drag. I just have this feeling.
Yeah.
That he and Ginny are kinky. Okay. I don't know why. How's that for a vision? In their mobile home, their RV. It's like, just leave people alone.
Let people be.
I mean, we have to let them be who they are, don't we?
Oh, of course.
And you don't have to respect it, but you can respect that that's their choice.
And I
Is
think that's part of it. When you are exposed to it, unless you go in with a preconceived notion, there's no way you could walk out of a drag show with anything but fun and joy and laughter and being amazed at talent and that kind of thing. If you don't know that because you've never actually experienced it, shame on you for making decisions about something that we can tell you don't have much experience with. I mean, quite frankly, that's what it feels like to me.
Yeah. Or maybe they have too much experience.
Maybe that's it.
Listen, more battles to face in the world.
You never know nowadays, and that's okay. We'll figure it out.
It's so great to talk with you guys about this. And I love these discussions because there's so much stuff going on. I love being made aware of it. And thank you, Christy, for bringing this up. I really appreciate it. Well, listen, I look forward to the next episode. Let's see what kind of wacky, weird person we can get
The
on.
wacky weirdos, they're the best.
Thanks, guys. Talk to you soon.
Don't forget to like and subscribe to Dangerous Drag Queens and Other Deviants, as well as Virtual Arts on Facebook, Instagram, X, and YouTube. And be sure to check us out at www.virtualartsproductions.org for all our latest projects.
And if you like what you hear, please share it with a friend. That's all for now. Keep living dangerously and on your own terms.